Governor Rick Snyder has signed right-to-work legislation into law. While the protesters have exited the Capitol building, the debate continues. Will right-to-work provide worker freedom and spur economic growth, or will it lead to an erosion of the working class standard of living? We'll hash it all out on West Michigan Week. And thank you for joining us on West Michigan Week. On the panel, Kara Vallée, Grand Rapids Business Journal. Thank you for joining us. Sure. Dave Murray, MLive Media Group. Good seeing you again, sir.
Good to be here, sir.
And on the panel, Mark Schauer, Michigan Laborers, Employers, Cooperation, and Education Trust. We'll just call it Michigan Lesset from now on.
Sounds great, Patrick.
And Jared Rodriguez, President of West Michigan Policy Forum. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, quite an interesting week we experienced in this state. I don't think we've seen anything quite like it at the Capitol building, on the grounds around the building. Mark Schauer, you were there. You're opposed to right to work.
Yes.
What was it like being there on the ground?
Yeah.
You were sprayed with pepper spray.
Yeah, a lot of firsts that day. I was a member of the legislature for 12 years, 6 years in the House, 6 years in the Senate. I was in leadership. And I've been out of politics for a couple of years working for a labor management group connected with the Construction Laborers Union. And so I've had have a window into the benefits of a labor-employer partnership, and we can talk about that more. But I was there because I think right to work is wrong for Michigan. Will put Michigan on a path to compete with low-wage, low-skilled states, hurt our workforce readiness, and do many other things that won't create the kind of state that I'd like for my grandkids. But that day was very emotional, in part because of the nature of the legislation, that it's a direct assault on organized labor and what they worked for to build a middle class and so many other things in our state. It was emotional because of the way Governor Snyder did a surprise 180 when he had said that right to work would be divisive for Michigan. He's right. Wasn't on his agenda, and I watched his press conference the Thursday before the vote, so 5 days before the final vote, and said we need right to work in Michigan. We need to be more like Indiana, and he asked the legislature to introduce the bills that day, begin their passage, and put them on his desk within days. That's what happened, without any public hearings, suspending all legislative rules, doing it as quickly as possible in keeping at least with the Constitution. So that's why there were in excess of 12,000 people, as reported by the media, very vocal, emotional, well-behaved. I was among them. People have said I'm pretty mild-mannered and not one to typically be pepper sprayed. Well, I think the drama of the situation, I think, was in direct reaction to what was at stake for Michigan and how the legislature was ramming it through. And I think the polling that's come out from national pollsters showing that only 41% of the people support right to work, 51% oppose it. Governor Snyder's favorability and job approval has plummeted. It's a direct result to what they did to the people of Michigan that day.
And Jared, you had a sense that there were a lot of outsiders coming in to Lansing who may have stirred the pot here.
You know, I think that's what we saw from a lot of the union folks that were in town. We saw them from Ohio, Chicago, Wisconsin. A couple of folks were interviewed and claimed to be from other states, coming in to tell Michigan lawmakers what to do. It was a week full of emotion. I think the focus with the governor and legislative leadership was, how do we keep our state moving forward? How do we continue to give workers and all taxpayers in Michigan more freedom and choice to do what they feel is appropriate with their hard-earned dollars based on their own decision and their families? I don't think people were well behaved, and we saw the results of that with things being destroyed, property destruction, even those in the Capitol. There was clearly some things that had gone wrong with the building. They shut down the Capitol and stopped people from coming in there for a reason. People were charging the Senate chambers. There was lots of hostile activity within. Folks were arrested and brought out of the Capitol. But nevertheless, I think as we move into 2013 and beyond, this is about economic development in Michigan. making sure that all Michigan workers have the choice and freedom in the workplace, and nothing but that.
I don't know if you were there. Were you there last
there.
Tuesday?
Yeah.
I was
Thursday.
there on the grounds. I was there when the Capitol was locked down the prior Thursday. You could have rolled a bowling ball down the Capitol. I think there were a few outside folks there in solidarity, but what the civil disobedience that day, I don't think is the story. The story, and we'll let our press folks talk about that. The story is about legislation, and I think it should be made clear that right to work isn't what it was purported to be. It's not about whether you decide to belong to that union in your place of work where you've chosen to work, and perhaps that collective bargaining unit was there before you went there. Perhaps it was voted on by the workers there once you got there. You can already decide not to become a member of that union. That's the law. What this allows is for you to freeload and receive all of the wages, benefits, pension, workforce training, worker safety benefits that are bargained between that union and the employer. You can receive all of those things and not pay.
Now, the only way that unions are hurt by this would be if their own members decide, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Or if I'm already not a part of it, I don't want to pay 85% of the dues for the fee.
Right. That's
so
right.
Shouldn't the unions look internally now and say, okay, we have a situation where our folks have the option of leaving. What are we going to do differently to keep them so they don't want to not pay their dues anymore? They don't want to be the folks
right.
who will be paying an agency fee.
And I think unions do that now. I'm a member.
Why are they so worried if so many people are leaving?
Well, experience from other states, and I think that's the motivation for the so-called right to work law is to weaken labor unions in Michigan. Cornell University reports that between 20 and 30% of union members will decide to not pay for those services.
Is that an indication that those members are unhappy with the services?
Well, I think
provided by the
it means that they can get something for nothing. And I have enough college economics to know about rational economic behavior. And yeah, there could be some dissatisfaction with the union, with the employer, but if you can get those things without paying for them, people, in some cases, people will choose to do that. And you're right. It will hurt revenues to unions, but they're providing a service for all of those workers.
Getting back to the method, I guess, Jared, I appreciate going back to the West Michigan Policy Forum, and in 2008, this was one of the top 5 agenda items for the business community. And this is a business community drawn from across the state, but dominantly West Michigan in terms of the policy conference and those agenda items for the legislature. And this year, the group voted on 5 objectives at the end of that September policy forum, and right to work was not among them. There was certainly some dissension among the West Michigan business leaders who have made that, a #1 issue. I think certainly the policy forum and your leadership has created this legislation and made it possible to get it approved in this month. So it also kind of comes back up after the forum. It is going to be a part of the agenda, an agenda that the representatives at the policy forum thought, again, was too divisive to be, one of the 5 key economic issues to address. So I'm looking at the manner in which it keeps coming back, and to your points, Congressman Schauer, the manner in which it was moved through and passed both chambers, and the now lawsuits that are being filed because of that. Do you think these things weaken your position? And do you think there's adequate defense, just in rule of law, in a civil society, to uphold this legislation going into 13?
Well, I appreciate the question, and you are right. In 2008, we came out in support of freedom to work in Michigan, and continue to take a focus on economic development for our state, trying to make sure we create the environment for job providers to create and get out of the way. And we continued that theme in that agenda item. We had another conference in 2010, which we didn't vote on, quite frankly, because our priorities hadn't really been accomplished, so we didn't want to throw them out. But I do want to make sure that we note that we did vote on top 10. In 2008, we had 10 items. Number 6, coincidentally, was talent in Michigan. And in 2012, we did concentrate quite a bit on talent at our conference. Freedom to Work did make our top 10 this time. We did have some overlap, I'll call it duplication, in transportation infrastructure funding, this time with what we had in 2008. We did commit to boiling these down to 5, something manageable, so that we could blend our agenda together and create a longer list of priorities for us to work on. So
we continue. Do you consider this your success, the right to work legislation? Is this a policy forum success for West Michigan?
I think this is a success for us. It is a check mark next to the directive that we were told was important to help move Michigan forward. Absolutely.
Let me say, sort of going to the nature of your question, I think Governor Snyder's credibility has been seriously damaged because of, in his own words, saying that right to work would be divisive for our state, was not on his agenda. And the fact that he did such a dramatic reversal at the 11th hour in a lame duck legislative session where the margin of victory were Republican House members, at least, who lost election. And so there are a lot of credibility questions. I've known Jared for several years, going back to my time in the legislature, and you're a good person. And but the West Michigan Policy Forum was very engaged in Proposal 2, created Protecting Michigan Taxpayers, which spent almost $23 million in attacking and winning, collective bargaining rights and defeating Proposal 2. We know that almost $3 million of that came from the DeVos family. With all due respect, it's a group with a very clear agenda.
Will the procedures of this month cause concern in the new year for repeal of this legislation? Do you think that those lawsuits then are
Well, I know there will be a number of challenges. We haven't even mentioned the fact that there was a $1 million appropriation to respond to public inquiries about the new law. When this State Department in charge of oversight is already funded to deal with the public. It's an appropriation to get around the public having an actual say, an opportunity for a referendum on this horrible legislation. It's bad and offensive, and I think vulnerable on a number of fronts.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll mix in Prop 2 and the voters, how they voted on Prop 2 back in November when we come back in 1 minute. And we're back with more West Michigan Week. And we don't have to go too far back. About 6 weeks ago, voters turned down Proposal 2, which was the collective bargaining proposal. And also at one point, the governor did say that if a measure such as right to work crossed his desk, he would sign it, even though he has said this wasn't the right time. We need to unite, not divide. But apparently this was the right time because it seemed as though Proposal 2 was the signal that set this forward. Was this the signal, and did anybody expect it to happen this quickly?
You know, I think
You did.
I did too.
This was a conversation that's been going on publicly since 2008 about Michigan becoming a freedom to work state. So it really isn't a new conversation per se. And I think the governor was also very clear in his conversations with labor leaders in saying, please don't bring divisive policy forward in Proposal 2, and they decided to move forward with it. They brought this to the forefront in 2012, despite the governor saying, please don't. And knowing what the governor's position, they decided to move forward. We felt an obligation to continue to protect all Michigan workers and not just a select few. And we decided that Proposal 2 was not going to be good for Michigan, especially when you enshrine anything in our state constitution.
Well, I've got one other question in that regard. You know, going forward with the education reforms that are being proposed by Governor Snyder, does this not clear the way in terms of dealing with the Michigan Education Association a little bit differently? Are there implications in getting right to work passed now so that that doesn't become a hurdle in education reforms next year?
Well, we're just starting to see some of the reform in the report that's come out on what the financial impact of education reform would be, and I think we'll begin to see even more of that come in early on in 2013. You know, I think passing freedom to work now is sending a signal not only to Michigan companies that might be looking to invest, but also outside of our state that we are a welcoming state to job providers. You know, Michigan's workforce is I think it's a little over 17.5% unionized now. It should continue to be over 17.5% unionized tomorrow.
Well, the perception of Michigan is certainly a piece of this, and it is perception that Michigan is a union state and you can't get anything done. You can't get work done in Michigan.
But I think the irony is,
in terms of economic development, that's the biggest thing I would think.
You know, I live in Battle Creek, and we just landed a couple of new manufacturers in our industrial park. I mean, the day before, I think it was the day before Right to Work passed, President Obama was here at a Chrysler plant in southeast Michigan, and you know, the irony is that Chrysler invested another $120 million, 115 new jobs. We've seen thousands of new good union jobs here created in Michigan, and many non-union jobs created in Michigan. I mean, what you know, the governor tried to hang his hat in part on, you know, perception has become reality, but you know, we should not be emulating Indiana, which is becoming more of a low-wage state, and sort of states that in the South and the West that are low-wage, right-to-work states. We should be emulating states like Minnesota, Massachusetts. Site selection professionals cite those states because they're high knowledge, they're highly educated and highly skilled workforces.
Well, but how does right to work lower wages, lower salaries? The unions. This is an internal union matter in terms of who's a member, who's not a member. They're still bargaining those contracts. That hasn't changed. The people sitting around the table, by and large, are still the same people. Why would the unions suddenly negotiate for lower wages just because they're losing some of the members?
The experience in other states, there is the research I did leading up to Proposal 2 was that states that had stronger collective bargaining laws and a higher proportion of their workforce that were unionized had higher wages, more people covered with health care, more people covered with pensions, lower poverty, lower unemployment rate. And you know, here I'll go back to the Cornell University study where it would be anticipated that 20 to 30% that union revenues would be reduced by 20 to 30%. That weakens their ability to do the work that they do. And it's not just negotiate for good wages and benefits. The laborers union invests $4.6 million a year in apprenticeship and training programs. Our employers are big contractors that build bridges, hospitals,
work readiness.
Power plants, pipelines, are very concerned because if you take that 20 to 30% and reduce our apprenticeship and training investment by that hurts us all by reducing the readiness of our workforce.
Do they spend more on their politics? I mean, imagine some of those folks who are going to be pulling out of the union might be doing so because they don't like the the heavy.
That's a
all
key
the-
point.
Dave,
That's a key point.
it's not. It's a red herring because already union members have to decide separately whether they want to
Well, for the
contribute
PACs,
to
right, but dues money gets
political.
spent on politics. We know that from Steve Cook's letter, his MEA president, out to his members, telling them who to vote for and why, and attacking all the Republicans.
Political activity of all types is separate from the agency fee for collective bargaining services that Right to Work goes after.
I think we have to be very clear that collective bargaining is not going to go away. It's federally protected, and it will continue to exist. And when you compare with other states, you know, California is a very heavily unionized state, and I don't think, aspire to be like California either. So I think we have to be very careful in comparing ourselves. You know, this should be a union membership driver, really. If we have an open state for job providers that want to come here, when you talk about site selectors, one of the top two things that they are asked is that state a freedom to work state or a right to work state or not? And if they are not, they're moving elsewhere. And that's what's happening if you ask economic
But
development right now
how do
from
businesses
Michigan.
benefit by this? I mean, if the union is still there and it still has its members and it's still at the table negotiating, how do businesses benefit by this?
I think Michigan, while unions in Michigan have long served a purpose, and they continue to do so. You know, they are not going to go away as a result of this. Even in right-to-work states right now, unions still exist. It's the environment that's created. It's the political environment that's created by the dues money that are collected from unions and funneled right into politics, which we've seen over the years. There's a hostile environment
So
that I
less
think
is more
businesses
for-
are looking to get away from. They don't want to come into a state where they see a hostile labor environment. And now we have an opportunity to look at that as an advantage. We have a skilled workforce that we should be taking advantage of. Our unemployment rate is extremely high, higher than Indiana, higher than the rest of the national average. If you look at Detroit, it's twice the national average.
I mean,
we've got to think about economic development. If we bring jobs here and create the environment for job providers to locate, I would think that would open up the pool
Jared, what I
for
can't-
more,
what I can't figure out
for the
is
unions
if-
to sell their services, to
if-
be
if-
more customer friendly, rather than worried about the money, because that's all I've heard is about the money.
But if I'm
We
hearing
are
you say
concerned
this
about
isn't going to
workers.
affect collective bargaining, this isn't going to affect union membership, I don't see how that affects business perception. I think you asked the question, what does it really do for business? And I think this is, I know this is ultimately about politics. I mean, you talked about political activity. I mean, the right and the corporate special interests that Jared represents have been going after sort of the political clout of labor unions. This is a direct assault on unions. Not only will the membership decline, but dollars of all types to labor unions. If this is good for workers and businesses, you haven't really talked about the public sector, but why are police officers and firefighters exempt? I mean, why not corrections officers?
I can't answer that question. You'd have to ask the legislature.
I mean,
We
there
want
is no.
everyone to
I'll give
have
you a
that
hint.
right
There is
and
no
freedom.
policy answer to that question. I mean, this was about vote getting. This was about peeling off constituency groups that would oppose right to work. I am gravely concerned about our state. This is sending us down the wrong track. This is sending the wrong message to people that we want to bring to our state. We have sort of created a deep wedge in among people in our state, and it's not going to go away anytime soon.
Well, I was just going to say, we're in the last couple of minutes here, but the bottom line, you have to look at a couple of things. And one is have to be employment, and the other is going to be revenue. Are we going to see improvements in employment, and will we see a revenue
I mean,
shift?
Patrick, Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame, I think we would agree is a pretty respectable institution. They did research on as the Indiana legislature was contemplating enacting right to work, and they found that states that enacted right to work actually had slower economic growth rates than prior to enacting right
The
to work.
statistics don't
So-
support that.
The
in
Wall
Indiana.
Street Journal wrote about that in December 12 and said pretty much the same thing, which is what I was, the point I was going to ask you. In terms of employers want higher household incomes and higher education attainment on the part of a workforce and one that's prepared. So does it
We're a
come to some
consumer-driven economy, and you
compromise
lower
here?
wages, it hurts the economy.
Well, I think what we've seen in Indiana is we've seen an influx of people looking at that state. Caterpillar moved some of their facility and jobs there, both from Michigan and Canada. I think the governor has been very clear that they've seen an uptick in economic activity as a result. We would expect the same here in Michigan. To say that jobs coming into our state shouldn't come in here, I think is wrong. We need to be worried about economic development, making sure that jobs will continue to locate in our state.
Okay, so I'll take that as watch the next 5 years, see if employment improves and if revenues also increase.
But
We'll have to
control
end
for a
there.
number of variables and do real analysis.
All right. We'll thank the panel. Carol Valade, Grand Rapids Business
Thank
Journal.
you.
Dave Murray,
Thank you.
MLive Media Group, thank you. Mark Schauer, Michigan Lesset, much easier to say it that way, and Jared Rodriguez, President, West
Thank you.
Michigan Policy Forum. Thank you all for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you next week on West Michigan Week.